Yes. Okay, that ordinance passed. That's read. Okay. Prior to the resolutions is we have an opportunity to speak. So we have public questions on the resolutions. Please state your name and address for the record. Public comment during this portion is limited to questions on below resolutions only.
Mr. Mayor, prior to if I could, I understand there's a question on 2013-138, the last meeting while I was on vacation. If I could clear that up. The Burlington County Max, that's the Municipal Alliance Condominium something service. What that does is we co-op. Maple Shade leads it with about 15 other towns, and this is for our tipping fees and trash service at apartments and condominium complexes throughout the county. And this is our service fee to them.
The actual question, Steve, was that there was a difference in the money amounts.
It varies the year to year was the thing. How they broke the total payment down.
Right.
You know, I don't have the original paperwork for me what the exact total was, but the way, you know, year one is one price, then it goes up, and then for the 2-year contract you'll see the price, and then you'll see 2013. It's the way they break it down. That's all.
It was just that on the same page within 2 paragraphs it says not to exceed $25.09.20, and then the following paragraph it says an amount not to exceed $18.91.08. So that was what the question was: how you have 2 not to exceed amounts that are not the same. And it's a document.
Well, because if you go April 13th to December 13th, that's 9 months. Okay, if we stretch it out again, April 13th through March 14th, that's where you get the 2509.
Yeah, we saw that on that back page.
Right.
You got the 9 months for 1891.08, and then you have January through March for 1812. Then you back up for the contract year, which we're in, April 13th to March 14th, the 2509.20. So you're saying this is approving what is past and the future.
Yeah, because some people get in at different times, some people opt out. Like I was talking to a manager today, for some reason he's not sure what he's going to do. So some people opt in at different times, and that's why it's broken down like that.
Yeah, actually, there was also a discussion on if there's a request here to respond by a certain time if you want to, go further with this shared services. Are we look at that, or are we contemplating that?
I think you look at that, and I understand there's another program out there that I'll speak with Mr. Berry about in the future.
All right, so those numbers are square.
Yeah.
Okay then. All right, back to the public. Any questions on these resolutions, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. My right, you will have 2nd row, questions and resolutions, 3rd row, 4th row, the back row. Over to my left, your right, 1st row, 2nd row,
My name is Louis Philip. I live in 370 South Burton. I have 2 questions on resolution. The first one on resolution 2013-138. Can you clarify more?
that's what we just talked about.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's for trash pickup in the condominiums.
Oh, okay. And my last one, I think like the resolution 2013-139. I'll say it should table it. I mean, what kind of political he is? Do you know?
What was the question?
What his political view, Democrat or Republican?
We're a non-partisan government still, first off, and even if we were a partisan government, I'm not sure that, I know that wouldn't mean anything to me, and I don't even think it would be, in my opinion, appropriate to even ask.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, if anybody else wants to address that, they can.
No, I think that's a violation of the hiring process.
Okay.
So, yeah.
You think it's a wise choice that you made? Your opinions?
You want to answer?
I think we'll get to them when we get to the resolution. We'll cover them then.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in that row? Next row, question on resolution. Third row, questions on resolutions. Fourth row, back row. Okay, seeing no further questions on the resolutions, seeing no public, then close the questions by public portion and move on to the resolutions themselves and handle them singly. Resolution 2013-136, authorizing appointments to the Land Use Planning Board. I've never actually seen it done this way, so I'm first off, I'm kind of confused that we're not doing a nomination process. But having said that, I touched base with Mr. Jones slightly last week, and you know, I have the roster here for the planning board, and I do not agree that alternate one is expired. The terms expire 2 at a time, and the alternate 3 and alternate 4 clearly expired 6/30/13, but the alternate 1 and 2 they run, which was last year, and when it expired, you were appointed to it. You were moved up from class 3 to class 1, and
He also was on the board. I spoke with Mr. Rial, the solicitor for the planning board. He also stated that alternate 1, 3, and 4 are positions that are available to be appointed to.
And again, I would suggest that we take a look at that, because the fact of the matter is that these rosters have been in place for years. The names change, but the dates that they expire never do. And they're 2-year appointments for the alternate, as you pointed out. And I don't see how we would have had 3 alternates expire at the same time. It's clear that you have 2 expiring, and then the following year you have 2 expiring. You know, it definitely, the documentation is there that you do not have 3 expiring in 1 year. And if we look back at the minutes, we would see that we moved Mr. Jones up from class 3 to class 1, alternate 3 to alternate 1, and we appointed Nick Sedano at the same meeting, and we left alternate 3 and 4 open. Alternate 4 has never been appointed that I know of, but the rosters clearly show that those 2 they were separated in 2 at a time. So it's logical stuff, because
What you're saying is it was an unexpired term.
we're trying, right, Jim, the alternate 1 is an unexpired term. And I think we're making the same mistake that we made with Mr. Belton when we took him out, and it wasn't an expired term either. But
Well,
in this
there's no
particular
harm.
case,
My understanding is all the positions are I didn't look at the roster, so I don't know that. Because you're looking at me, Mr. Mayor, I'm assuming you were addressing it to me. I did not look at the roster, so I'm not aware of it. I understand that there's the regular class 4 members. There's 3 up for 1 year, and then 2 up another, and then 1 up the 3rd year, and then none up the following year is the way it was done in the past.
The way all 3 are vacant right now.
well, all 3 class 3s are not class 3s, class 4s are clearly vacant, and that's reflected here with 6/30/13 expiration dates on all 3 of them. But what's not reflected here is any expiration date for alternate 1 or alternate 2, because we have not had an updated list since 7/5/11, because this one was the one that was used in the February meeting, And this one reflects, it wasn't updated either because it still reflects Jason Jones in the alternate 3 spot. And
Well,
so we have paperwork that's not up to date, but the
That's
template is there, George. Where the template is saying that you have terms that expire, you know, two 1 year and then 2 the next year.
well, yeah, I could say this, you know, number one, I know that the former, there were several things that the former clerk didn't always update significantly. I'm not sure if Steve knows, if the chief, if you know when any of this was updated or when the terms are up.
That was the
That being
last
said,
roster that I could find when she left digging for you.
and maybe you have to dig through it one by one, but if no one was appointed, and there's clearly 3 vacancies.
But
I mean, right now, there are vacancies, there's no one serving alternate 1, 3, or 4, correct?
James
Am I right?
Knowles, James Ramsey was appointed when I was away to the seat that Mr. Jones vacated when he became a councilman.
What
And
seat was that? Which seat was
the
that?
alternate 1 position. And so he was appointed, James Ramsey was appointed to an unexpired term that from this paperwork does not expire until 6/30 of next year, the same as Nick Sedano's alternate 2 position would expire. They're mated. You have 2 that are mated, 3 and 4, and the other 2 that are mated are 1 and 2. That's what this documentation shows. So if nothing else, you know, I think that it would be advisable to look into that one further, if nothing, and go forward with the other 2. But from the documentation that's here, it's pretty clear that James Ramsey's seat didn't expire, hasn't expired, and we didn't have a quorum at the 2 planning board meetings. Apparently, Mr. Jones stated we were only 1 person short. I didn't actually count it up. So if James Ramsey wasn't allowed to sit in his seat, and it was still his seat, we actually could have been doing business all along. But
Did he try to sit? I don't know. I don't know who
The
advised him.
the solicitor said that alternate 1, 3, and 4 were available to be appointed to, and that they were vacant.
Well, I mean,
But
I
again-
defer to Mr. Rial on that. I'm assuming he knows the roster on it, and he's the one that, at one point contacted me again. I never looked at the roster. You'd have to go back probably through years and minutes. The whole point of passing the ordinance that was passed tonight in 2nd reading sort of corrected it, so if council has any concerns, you could certainly appoint the proposed
3 and
nominee.
4.
3 and 4. You could also, as the mayor indicated, nominate the other individual who you're considering nominating to one of the, rather than alternate to the regular vacancy, because they would be a sitting member. That would be the term through the end of this calendar year as the ordinance was written, in order to align the dates correctly. So if you want to try that, you know, that would certainly, either way you'll be able to have a quorum, but or you can mix it around. If the goal is to appoint at least 3 people, you can consider that. Apparently, Mr. Ramsey didn't think he had a seat, although I'm not certain why, if that was a problem.
So actually, Mr. Ramsey did think he had a seat. He reached out to both me and Steve, and he's here tonight because he not only thought that he had a seat and was set for training this October, next month. He was supposed to go in for his planning board training with Nick Sedano, but also, you know, his application was never listed. You know, but again, there's no urgency here. If we appoint the 2 alternates 3 and 4, then we can consult with Mr. Rial. You said you assumed that he looked at the roster, but I don't like to go with that assumed thing, and he was not challenged on it. I didn't know that we were appointing alternate 1 until the last meeting. And again, I tried to have a little bit of discussion, and I did not think that alternate 1 was up, but we didn't have the time. So, you know, again, it's lost on me where the fire is, that we have to move, you know, and not just make sure we're not doing the do-over thing that we constantly do around here.
And you could certainly do that if that's the case. You certainly want to appoint if there's any question. My point is, you know, council can consider, now that you passed the ordinance, just so the public's aware, the whole point of the ordinance was that there was the gap when the legislature enabled nonpartisan municipalities to switch from a May to November election. It didn't address the issue with the land use board, and the confusion created specifically for, this is a great illustration, in fact, the fact that there's this confusion over this position. I would suggest there's probably a lot of other similar issues. The township code still had the various other appointments July to July, which is easily correctable. The land use board is a little bit different, and the legislature, when they allowed the township to change, didn't address the issue as to that, and further, the prior council didn't get to the point of addressing it. So this ordinance addresses that. You know, you could, if there's enough, you can have a quorum. You can, if there's a question, I would suggest you wait on that. That doesn't mean that the person in there, an alternate one or even all three, couldn't be appointed to. You can make them regular members to the term that expires at the end of the year.
20 days after.
Yeah.
And with all, and George, you might recall that, a member of the public questioned if what we were going to be appointing to, and we went in, there was a discussion about how, we may not be appointing the
Exactly.
the class 4s until the reorg, because there was only 2 meetings, possibly 3 if we have a Christmas meeting. That was where the conversation where Mr. Jones mentioned we were only 1 short, so if we appoint the alternates, there's definitely enough. There is no discrepancy on alternate 3 or alternate 4. Those are clear and presently vacant. They've been vacant for quite a while, actually, since last year. Both those positions have been vacant. So since Jason Jones moved up to class 1, alternate 1, alternate 3 was vacant. So I would suggest that we appoint to. And those were all provided to us on the
Mayor, if you could send me the
roster.
roster so I can take a look at it, see how that was developed as well. That would be helpful, so I can.
Well, there's other vacancies. The environmental committee has expired. The Armed Forces Recreation Committee, or the Armed Forces Committee, was never created or never filled. There's a liaison there that's never been appointed in many years. So there's other things that need to be addressed. But here tonight, we have the alternate 3 and alternate 4 that are clearly available, and that's what I would suggest that we just do.
And we did have that discussion about the alternate 1 position, and after the meeting, we talked about it a little bit more. I spoke with Mr. Rial, and he stated to me that 1, 3, and 4 were available. I mean, to wait till tonight's meeting I think if we could have asked him his personal opinion before tonight's meeting, if there was any concern, and we could have had this resolved before tonight's meeting and not waste a little bit of time discussing it now, and we could have moved forward a little bit further better. So I would like to hold off on alternate 1 also until we get clarification. I know I had the word, but we can appoint to 3 and 4 so they have.
That's fine. And for clarity, we get our packages on Wednesday night, and in due honesty, I didn't open them until Friday, and there is no urgency to that position being filled.
Well, there is, because we've been asked to fill positions to give them quorum. Now, if there's 3 vacancies, we can fill those 3 vacancies to give them the quorum. So, if there is a sick person that can't make it, instead of just appointing 1 person, they have enough people on standby to fill the position. So that's why we were looking to appoint the 3 alternates, not just 1 alternate to give them the quorum that they needed.
We would be appointing 2 tonight, and we appointed our council position back on.
But they can't.
They can't vote on the youth fans. I'm well versed in that. Again.
You got 2 weeks. You can. I'm sure I'll call Mr. Rial in the meantime. When I spoke to him, he didn't bring the
needs to
meeting
review the
next Monday.
documentation.
So we appoint 2. They'll still have.
They have the quorum.
They'll have a quorum,
They have the quorum.
and we can get through it as
So-
long as everybody shows.
Well, if Mr. Ramsey's spot isn't up, I'm sure he's anxious and willing to show, so you'll have 3.
We will have 3, but I mean, we could have discussed this after last meeting. Could have been brought to Skip's attention.
I didn't realize there was a
and we could
discrepancy.
have resolved this issue before tonight's meeting to where Mr. Rial's not here to speak on behalf of the planning board.
This appears to me from the paperwork that it's so cut and dry that it's kind of laughable that that we are constantly debating basically and going back and forth on what has been in paper for 2 years, near a year and a half, and this is the second time. That document was in all of our packages on February 25th. That's the package I pulled it out of. That copy there. This copy here I've had for years,
And that copy there has been outdated for how long? My name's still on it.
Right. But
Jim Knoll's name's still on it.
the terms,
But it's still
terms
not
don't
updated.
change.
And I gotta look at
Terms
that.
don't change.
And I need to look at that.
The names change.
There is ways that the terms
Terms
can
stay the
change.
same.
The terms can
Understood,
change.
But if it's going to be updated, we need to
The
update
terms
it.
potentially can change, but
The terms can change.
I don't think they did here. I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I have to speak with Mr. Rial.
How come we have a term for like an alternate board who's never been appointed? Fisheries blank in general, there is no term. There's no one ever been appointed to alternate board.
But it sits there, even though we don't
How
appoint
can it
it.
sit there?
We didn't appoint the three, and it doesn't stop the clock.
If we didn't make any changes to the ordinance, I would say the 2-year clock starts as of the day they expire. We would never be able to appoint with someone dating back in July.
But the terms,
And that's what the-
they
that's-
just keep rolling forward. They're
No.
there, and when you appoint to them, it's available to you, and it's the cycle
So you're
has to
saying
stay.
halfway through the cycle, you'd be appointing a half-a-year term or 1-year term?
That's exactly what we've all been appointed to.
Then I think we've been doing it incorrectly.
When you ran for a
Up.
Kersey seat, you ran for 1 year, you didn't run for 4.
No.
That was an already
Mr. Mayor,
established term.
This was never, no one ever sat there, so this never unexpired. It's never been filled.
Mr. Mayor, that's part of the
That
problem
is
with
to
the
my
way.
knowledge.
I can-
You're using my statement as law now, that's good, all right.
There are interpretations, and I'm not.
I'm not actually sure if alternate 4 ever, was filled or not, but if we're gonna go with it just simply on my word, then
There.
that's good, that works.
Mr. Mayor, there are interpretations. Mr. DeFalco is correct that the clock starts running at that point in time. That's been part of the problem. That's part of what the ordinance is trying to do, that everything gets done on January 1st or shortly thereafter, so that the terms are aligned as much as possible. Obviously, there's turnover in government. It's not uncommon, although I think it got way
Maybe
more.
somewhere along the line you should review this document, because this document also states under the planning board that Class 2, the township official, is appointed by the mayor. We all know that all those things have been ripped out. So we might as well, take a look at that too. I wouldn't even
I've
waste
never
my-
seen the
my
roster.
time.
If someone can send me the roster, I'd love to look at the roster.
Steve, could you make sure that Mr. Sevenone has a copy of the roster? Can you make a copy of this one?
I have officers.
So, back to the resolution that we have is straight up to, it's just a resolution, so, George, there's no nomination process here, we're just voting on this resolution with the deletion of number 1, which is the alternate 1 unexpired term.
Well, if somebody took the time to write the resolution, because I guess that they contacted the manager, but you can certainly open it for nominations if that's a preference on a resolution. That's normally what's done, but it can be done like this if everybody communicated their preferences to the manager and it was tallied up.
Well, I'm back to that communicated. How did these names come up? I mean, normally we do sit here and we put names in nomination, and then that's how they're voted upon. Did I miss another email? Did we?
I got this resolution.
Okay, so where did the names come from? So you're saying that Kim Marie White picked 3 names and put a resolution together. And come on, somebody's got to help me here.
There was some discussion about, because 136 was, I believe, wasn't it left blank the last meeting? There was no names on for 136. Okay, I brought it up to the clerk that you can't have a resolution appointing people with no names on it. Okay, at which point I sent an email out requesting the names. Okay? And
To whom?
The council.
So me too, you're saying you sent me an email?
Yeah, when I send an email out, I send it to the mayor and I BCC everybody else so we can't start the reply chain and violate the Meetings Act.
Okay.
Okay, and without going up and looking at my computer or when I got a phone call, these are the 3 names that were provided. They were put in, we were doing the packet that Wednesday, and then the next time I saw this was when I got my email copy of it.
Okay. So the response came to you of the names? And these were the only 3 names that came back to you? And from whom, can I ask?
The deputy mayor and myself spoke.
Okay. Via phone, not email?
We did initially email, but then I think we spoke on the phone, didn't we, Rich? Because I called you.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So at any time during this process, did it come up, this isn't how we normally do this? Don't we normally put names up for nomination and then we vote on them? Like, isn't this the first time this has ever been done? And I've been sitting on council for 3 years,
Well,
and we've never
What I
done
can
this.
tell you is we started at the beginning of the year when we were talking about doing appointments because we would sit here at meetings like this and wonder about people's terms. And well, when was this guy's term? When was that? We only have this piece of paper. We don't have that piece of paper. So the solicitor made a suggestion that any appointments we do via resolution.
That was an email too.
Okay, and when I did the recreation appointments that were mine, I did it by resolution, which, in all honesty, I think is a good idea because it memorializes the action. Okay, number 1. Number 2, interviews were done for the land use. I didn't sit on them, I didn't participate in them. Okay, it requires a little bit of communication between everybody when names are coming. We're trying to keep the municipality running, and we're constantly sending emails and calls, and you know what? I don't get a lot of response. I don't get a lot of response back when I send emails. And sometimes I'll CC Victor just to make sure they went out. So I have people calling me daily about, I can't get on, I have a use variance. Well, council can't hear it.
See, I'm not
I can't get
arguing
on
with you
that.
about
I
that
wasn't
at all.
present for the interviews, okay? And
What I'm trying to
I
find
take
out.
direction from the council, but I also have to move the township forward.
Chief, I'm the first, I was the one the night that we didn't appoint to say we need to appoint because we got use variances and we got businesses knocking on our doors. So I'm not against that. What I'm saying is, if we're going to change the rules, the course of the way that we did business the 3 years that I sat here, that's the email I need.
Okay.
That's the email that says, we're not going to do things the normal course of business. We are now going to put in the names, and if you wind up with a dozen of them, then what are we going to do? We're going to vote on a dozen? Are we going to appoint a dozen? We can't.
Well, I think this also goes back to what we said before, where there were some rules that were voted on. There needs to be a process for doing this. Because,
Look,
Mr. Belton, when we're sitting upstairs during the day, doing everything else we have to do and trying to move forward and not getting any response, and then we're the ones here dealing with the businesses calling in, the people calling in, and we're trying to get direction, okay? You know, the interviews were done. I don't know what else to tell you other than, you know, how to come to a consensus.
Well, I just want to know now if the meetings that we used to have, when we talked about planning and appointments, were done in executive and those names were brought up, and then we discussed those names. That process has been taken away. We're not supposed to make a decision, as far as I know, between meetings when it comes to township business via email, as far as I know. That's illegal. So when we're making decisions, and correct me if I'm wrong, we are now allowed to use email to conduct township business between meetings, is what you're saying?
No, you're not allowed to have
You're not allowed to-
everybody, why I said to you is, I send, in my wait a second, let me hear me out. In my 2, it goes to the mayor. I blind carbon copy all council. So you can't reply all, and we're not in violations of the Open Public Meeting Act. If I get a response, okay, it's taken into consideration. And then if I look and there's a problem, say I got 15 names back, well, then I would have had to make individual phone calls and said, look, we're going to have to sit this down in executive session. Okay? But all we're trying to do is move the township forward.
Look, can I just add to this? Steve is correct. Part of the problem here is it happens in any government. It's better to memorialize it in resolution. Whether you do it, certainly it's completely proper to go by nomination. To conduct business like this, when you're doing nomination, you would get to the resolutions before you read the resolution. You would say, are there any nominations for the position? That's entirely proper. And then afterward, you say a resolution to appoint X person once the nomination is closed.
That's how we've done it the
And
last
you can
3
do that.
years.
Now, either way, you have to memorialize it here. But it's the same way. Steve handled it properly. He sent out the email. There was no illegal business conducted, so that suggestion is just off base. That's why he didn't do the blind copy. It's not conducting business. He's certainly free to get input from council. If there was going to be a big conflict about it, he would have set it down for an executive session before tonight, and maybe he would have left the resolution blank and penned it in. He could have done a million different things. He chose to handle it the way he did. It was entirely proper. I mean, look, certain things will happen. There are discussions that the manager has, input is given back to the manager. It occurs, and there's nothing wrong with it. When we sat down here in January at the first meeting, everybody knew there were plaques made up. Everybody knew who generally, it could have changed, but everybody knew that Mr. Dow was going to be the mayor and Mr. DeFalco was going to be the deputy mayor. The plaques were made up ahead of time, okay? That I'm sure Steve communicated with that. That's the way business is conducted. There's nothing improper about it or anything else. Okay, now, it could certainly change tonight, and this resolution could change, and if so, it would be amended if the nomination process comes up differently. But that doesn't mean that there's anything improper that Steve did here in handling it in this manner.
And I started the ball rolling only because when I came back from vacation, I was looking over stuff, and I go, how do you have a resolution appointing people when there's no names? That was my whole...
I actually would like to see us go back to an executive session where we discuss it, bring it forward, do the nomination process that we've been doing, and it's well longer than the time period that you're stating, Mr. Bellman. All the 21 years next month that I've been coming here, it has gone through a nomination process. I know, George, you tell me about different processes all over the state.
That's correct.
And every place has their way of doing it. And, it's my opinion, and it's just the one opinion, that the more we talk about things, the better,
absolutely,
it is for the town, okay, for the town. And, in the executive session tonight, kick it around, and then, the nom thing, vote, and then the resolution.
Okay, well, everybody, with all due respect, Mr. Mayor, everybody had the packets, but only everybody called me and asked me if there was an executive session. There was an issue. Why did somebody call me last week? And I would have made sure that we had
Well,
it
Steve, to
scheduled.
tell you the truth, with all due respect, and I know that this doesn't go at you, so I didn't even need to throw that in there, but, just in case anybody's thinking that I'm taking a shot at you. I've kind of, I think I've told you, I've kind of run out of steam with the, like when Mr. Jones was saying before, why didn't I reach out Friday when I looked at it? Because, quite frankly, after the way that the process went, and the way that the process has been going, I realize that I don't have the votes. I can't really affect what's going on. And if the majority have decided that this is the way it's going to go, then that's the way it's going to go. The same way that we push through the manager, hiring process and appointment into one night. And, and again, like I stated that night, if, the majority rules, I would just like an opportunity for us to discuss it and just, have the ability for us each to put our opinion in, so that, we at least feel, Mr. Belton and I at least feel like we're part of the process. And the people that elected us know that we are actually part of the process. And that's it. So to your point, Steve, yeah, it is, it is what it is. Just like there were just 2 names out of 47 that we interviewed. I did not know that the interview was going to occur. Neither did Mr. Belton. We had no questions ready. And but we still moved forward. We're still moving forward. So, we'll have a manager, we'll appoint these people. But, I actually, I'm real happy with all the applicants. I'm happy with the candidates for the manager. The process and what I've said are in the record already. It's in the minutes, check the minutes from last meeting. But anyhow, so, yeah, going forward, what do you fellas, what's the will of the council? Do we want to do this process where there's a resolution between meetings? Or would this council like to go back to the process of having a little executive discussion and doing the nomination process? And then, going forward. Let's just get it right out right now. What's the will of the council on this process? Is the will of the council the process that we have here tonight with a resolution that was an emailed in consensus, or is it the will of the council to go back to an executive session discussion and a nomination process? And the nomination process, George, you already explained to us, we were doing that wrong, you don't need a second. So we've been down this road before to correct the way we even do the nominations themselves. So, we have kicked that around.
It's entirely proper on the way the resolution is written for anybody to nominate a different individual on there, and it would be voted on upon an order of nomination. You could take them piece by piece. Either way, it should be memorialized in a resolution. That way you're not going to have questions.
There's never been an argument on that. It's always, anything that we do has to be memorialized in a resolution or an ordinance. Am I wrong on that?
Appointments don't necessarily have to be now. You can have action items now.
Okay.
I don't know that I think there were certain ones that were not, I've seen this year, that have not been memorialized in a resolution. It doesn't need to be. But it's good practice to do it because you're going to avoid the confusion, just like you said.
Well, good public practice is what I know I would like to see, okay? And I think all of the residents want good public practice. I mean, isn't that like a no-brainer that that's what we want to do? Good public practice?
Absolutely.
So good public practice is to have a resolution or an ordinance on what we do, right?
Correct.
Like in the procedures that we talked about, I actually dug that out, and I do actually have the resolution now. And I read it, and it doesn't extend or not extend past the year that it was passed, which was last year, the procedures that Steve was referring to. But,
Well, that's why I would suggest, whatever you decide, memorialize it, because it seems we go through this every couple of weeks.
and that's why I just asked what the will of the council is on the nomination process, because as we discussed earlier, this roster is not up to date. We will be going through this process again. The environmental committee is all expired according to the roster. There's a person that's expired last year on the Historical Preservation Commission. Class 4s are all, the 3 of them are expired. So we clearly have, several nominations that, we'll have to go through. So what is the will of the council? I'm not hearing back. Do you guys want to do executive session discussion and nomination, or do you want to just do...
Is Councilman Brown still on the line?
Mr. Brown? I would take that as a no. Oh, there he is. Yep, Mr. Brown is still there. Yes, he is. So...
I'd like to go ahead with resolution 2013-36.
Mr. Brown, right now, the question is, the question that I had on the table is, what is the will of the council as far as the process of appointment? Nominations with executive sessions, or resolutions as we've been doing tonight?
I'm sorry, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead with 2013-36.
Well, we don't
You can
have that
You can
tonight.
accept that as a...
It's 136.
136,
You can, Mr. Mayor, you could take a motion, or you can take nominations on the 3 positions if you like here from the floor. If anybody has them, you can listen to it and discuss it right out here. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's no need to even go in executive session. You could take nominations if people have other nominations, which apparently is the case. You could do that, and that's what you're referring to. I don't know what the...
Okay.
I mean, or you can go into executive session as well if that's the council's will, but it's...
I don't know that we need to go into executive, but I just would like to know that, well, we're going to change the rules, that we change the rules before
If we don't have any Robert's Rules of Order or anything that applies, as far as I'm concerned,
You should take nominations.
The motion that was made in the middle of the discussion, I'm running the meeting and I have a discussion going on. And since we aren't obliged to follow Robert's Rules of Order, or any set procedure, Skip Riel is coming to answer some questions, I guess. I didn't think that we would need to turn it into a full-fledged trial at this point, but whatever. There is still, Mr. Brown attempted to put a motion on the floor, and this chair is not recognizing that motion. This discussion will be tabled until Skip Riel gets here, and then we'll pick it back up. Does that make any sense, George?
Yeah, there was no second, so that's fine. Second's got to go forward, but you can...
All right, then, so...
You can table it until it's probably a good idea, if you think Mr. Rial's going to come to, that you get to find out about the alternate one.
I think we just push it back to the bottom of the resolution, since let's say it's way, it's around the corner, so we can take care of the rest of business.
All right, next would be Resolution 2013-138, resolution authorizing funding of the max contract with ADR Resource Group, Inc. This is a resolution that Steve talked about, so. Is there any further discussion? I think we pretty much discussed.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
All right. Falco made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please, on resolution 2013.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. DeFalco?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Dow?
Yes. All right, next up, resolution 2013-139. Resolution approving the appointment of township manager and approving the contract for the same. So, discussion on this resolution. I did not see the contract until the minute I got here, so.
Was that emailed to us too?
Yeah.
The contract?
Yeah, it was emailed, I got it Friday afternoon from Mr. Saponaro's office, and I sent it
I was
right
telling
out.
Vicki, I cannot open whatever format your office is using. I could not open it.
I apologize for that. Obviously, given it was 2 weeks ago that the council authorized me to go forward and speak with Mr. Berry, and I did so. It took a little bit of time.
I won't hold it up. I clearly,
But I think it got
several
all the
times
terms
I'm voting no. So, is there any other discussion?
Well, I did have, Chief, I don't know if you got an opportunity to talk with our CFO. Do we have enough money to fulfill the balance of this contract? If we sign a contract, do we have the
Well,
money?
if you sign a contract, obviously we have enough to cover October, November, December. It'll have to be inserted into the budget for the remaining.
So we do have enough
years.
what's the balance of
To cover
our budget this year to cover October, November, December based on the contract? Okay. That was a question that, I wasn't even sure we could afford to pay, so that was a question I had.
Well, I did actually have one question. That was, I could not find the salary ordinance that we just passed. I found last year's salary ordinance for manager was $14,000 to $50,000.
We'll have to adjust the salary ordinance for that, as well as one other position I found that we were like a couple $100 off.
So, George, this council would be able to approve this resolution, approve this contract, even with an ordinance,
You
a
need
salary
to-
ordinance that
you should-
doesn't allow the amount of money the contract states?
What you should do is do it, the contract wouldn't start until October 1st, so you could do a salary ordinance first, you could do an introduction of the salary ordinance tonight for that and the other position that the chief referred to adjust those two, and the chief should state it by title, and it could be adopted 2 weeks from today. You find that the salary ordinance is very simple, you could adopt that takes care of it immediately.
Well, except for the fact that we discussed the process of doing this ordinance by title only, and that wasn't, I believe one of Kim Quirk's recommendations was to get away from that.
This is absolutely needed, I believe you said.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me.
I agree with her in many items. I mean, a salary ordinance is pretty simple, quite frankly. Particularly, to the extent you could do it. You're announcing exactly what it is to change the range of this. That's why I just indicated that the chief should indicate. I'm afraid that there's something else that may be out of whack. I'm assuming the chief should also announce it, so that both of those items should be included in the salary ordinance, which obviously we're going to need to do the salary ordinance anyway for the other items, regardless of whether or not this was approved. But there's a salary ordinance.
So you're comfortable with putting a date on the second reading of that right now, because that was
Yeah,
another
absolutely.
issue that we've addressed as dysfunctioning,
I don't think that's dysfunctional. I don't think there's anything dysfunctional. I understand what she was trying to say, but I don't. It's very, very common to introduce things by title. And everybody here, if anybody has any questions about it, I think the only question that I would have is to have the chief indicate what the other title position that needs to be adjusted, and the rough range. And if that's the case, that's a very, very basic ordinance.
Well, there was the second piece to that, which is where we're doing these titles by title only, with the chaser being that we're not announcing in the second reading the fee, which is why the reporters are going nuts. And again, it's it may be past practice in the other locations that you work, but that has not been past practice. And I'm a big past practice guy, so if it works, it works.
Second reading's always
Announced.
the next meeting.
The next meeting, which you do
would be
now.
set by yourself and Steve Martin.
So we're looking at the 23rd for a second. And Steve, if we're wrong, we have $50,000 already in the budget regarding money, so there really is no need to worry about a salary update regarding the management
Well,
position.
for this year, it would cover it.
Yeah.
So,
You should still adjust the range anyway.
I'm just saying,
You're signing a contract, you have to adjust the range.
Yeah, you should adjust the range. You should do it by title.
I understand that. We should make the ordinance
2 weeks
all
from
over. I
today.
was simply answering a question.
That $50,000 is intact. What have you been getting paid at?
Once my contract was signed, I wasn't taking my site.
Oh, so you haven't been paying yourself for this outstanding job that you've been doing. Another reason why